Hey there, today we're going to take a look at a really cool Bill Evans tune, Comrade Conrad. I guess it's called Comrade Conrad, and this tune is really cool for many reasons, and we're going to use it as a vehicle for practicing chord tones. So I'm going to show you the tune, and then we're going to practice chord tones over these changes in very many different ways. So I'm going to we're going to start off real simple, just basic chord tones, and then I'm gonna make it more and more, not necessarily more difficult, but hopefully more musical as we go. So this video is for those of you who know what 4-part chords are. You need to know how to create 4-part chords, 4-part harmony, and you need to know about chord extensions as well. We're gonna take a look at that. But let's get started, shall we? So first off, let's just learn the tune, the melody. So I'm using my iReal Pro. I removed the drums and the piano and just kept the bass because I kind of like, it's nice to play like that. So I'm just going to play the melody for you. So this tune is pretty interesting for many reasons. It goes through two different keys. It starts in A flat and then kind of modulates into E flat. And then it also alternates between 4/4 time signature to 3/4, which is really cool when you're practicing. It kind of opens up your sense of rhythmic phrasing when you're practicing this tune. I think you will find that. So I play the melody very much as it's written on the page. You want to maybe change a little bit phrasing wise when you're playing it. It's very much like every note is offbeat, which is also is a good thing to work on. And then we have these nice kind of landing on the ninth of a major chord from a half step above, which gives you kind of a bluesy feeling. So from bar 17. Kind of like if you're altering the B flat. Also, it's interesting to note the melody contains like a superimposed triad over the altered dominant chords, like the bar 30. There's a D7 chord, but it's a B flat major triad over D7 altered, right? Very Bill Evans sounding. All right, so now let's practice chord tones. So we're just gonna play the chords as arpeggios. Right? So let's do that. Okay, so here's the most important thing about this tune and why I picked this tune as a vehicle for practicing chord tones. It modulates through every key. So for the soloing, he starts on a fifth from this key and then modulating through a cycle of fifths, I guess, until you're back to the original key. So he's soloing actually over every key. So it's quite a workout. So I'm not going to do that right now because it's going to take too long. But what I would do is I set there's a little function in iReal Pro where you can modulate each chorus, practice transposition. So I set it to transpose down by 5 half steps at every repeat, which is going to give me all the keys, right? As Bill Evans is doing it. So the first solo chorus starts in a new key. But let's just play the chord tones in the first key now. So three, four. Here's the next key. And we're back in 4/4. And so on until you've gone through all 12 keys. So this is going to give you quite a lot of work. Couple of things. Noticing that I'm not giving you the tabs here. So it's not that I don't like tabs. I use tabs all the time. But for this, it doesn't really help with tabs. This is the most common complaint I get, and it's also something that I always try to respond to when people comment that there are no tabs. Usually I do give tabs. I think tabs are good. But for this, it makes no sense with tabs whatsoever, right? Because it's not about what finger shapes you're using. It's about understanding what notes, the notes of the chord, and how to create these chords as arpeggios, and how to move through the harmony. So you need to know what the notes are, and the shapes doesn't really matter. You can play any shape that you like. You should try, you know, that's not important. So that's why I'm not giving you the tabs here. It doesn't really make any sense in my world with tabs in this case. Also, this is more of an ear training exercise than anything else, in my opinion. Because all this is outlining the harmony. You can hear the harmony, and that's all we're doing. So I could stay on this concept all day. I could talk about this all day, but I'm gonna move on because we need to move on. And I've already made a video in the past where I discussed this idea. So, I mean, there are 4 notes. So that means there's a lot of permutations, right? You can hear the chords go by like that, right? So there's all these things you could do. Obviously start the reversed. Another thing, depending on what level you're at, try to do this exercise playing through all 12 keys without looking at the chords, because obviously iReal Pro gives you the chords, but try to do it without looking after a while. That's a really, really good exercise. Memorizing this chord progression and figuring it out in every key. Then also the idea is that when you get better at this, you should be able to kind of find the closest voice leading, the smoothest voice leading. But we're moving on. So if you want to know more about that, check out my video on that. I think it's called Chord Tones over Autumn Leaves. So the problem with that exercise we just did is that we're not getting any extensions. And if we want to sound like Bill Evans-ish, we need to add some extensions to get that kind of rich harmony. So what you can do is start from the third of every chord. If I start from the third of the first chord, B flat minor 7, and play an arpeggio from there. I mean, to build an arpeggio from that note. So don't get confused here. You could play the previous arpeggio starting on the third and play, right? That's a B flat minor starting on the third. But I'm playing a D flat major 7, which gives me another chord on top over this chord. Because a B flat minor 9 is a D flat major 7 over B flat. So I'm playing those notes as an arpeggio, which is called a superimposed arpeggio, which is also something I've covered in previous lessons. So the rule of thumb here is for minor 7 chords, I play a major 7 from the 3rd. And major 7 chords, I play a minor 7 from the 3rd. Which gives me the 9th and no root. Eliminates the root. And dominant chords, unaltered dominant chords, I play minor 7 flat 5. So the first 4 bars are gonna sound like this. Now it gets a little bit funny. The minor 7 flat 5 chord, the 2-5 to the F minor, I started from the 3rd, I play this. A minor major 7 arpeggio, which gives me the 9th of that G minor 7 flat 5, which is a little bit funny sounding, but in this case it works really well because it sounds very Bill Evans to me. And then the C7, I play an E major 7 sharp 5 chord. So those 2 arpeggios are borrowed from the melodic minor. So we're using the modes of the melodic minor here. So let's do that over this. Go through all 12 keys doing that. That's gonna give you a lot of work. So that's quite a project, right? So there's some interesting things happening. So this the major 2nd on the minor 7 flat 5 chord is derived from the melodic minor, right? So it's a Locrian natural 2 scale, I guess we're using. I tend to not think of those modes like that. I think of the melodic minor. I think of them as just melodic minor. That note sounds really cool, but depending on the context, you might not want to play that. If you're playing in a more traditional context, it can sound really funny and even weird. But here, if you want to sound like Bill Evans, I think it works great. Notice also that I'm leaving some space. I think it's a good idea to leave some space. I leave some chords open when there's 2 bars of the same chord. You don't have to play anything because that gives me some room to kind of breathe. And also I could throw in some chord stabs or just some licks, whatever it is, just to keep things fresh when you're practicing. I think a mistake a lot of people make when they try to play chord tones over jazz standards or chord changes is that they play constant 8th notes. You don't have to do that. Imagine you're a sax player, right? You need to breathe at some point. There is a point of practicing like that too, to play constant notes, just to kind of get into the habit of forward motion, of going forward, just keep going. But for this kind of practicing, I would suggest leaving some space. By the way, all these PDFs are, as always, on my Patreon page. A different way of playing chord tones that I actually prefer, and I wish somebody had showed me earlier. And it's what I call the Coltrane Patterns. So instead of playing 1, 3, 5, 7, I'm gonna play 1, flat 3, 4, 5 for minor chords. So it gives me this shape. And for major chords, I play 1, 2, 3, 5. A flat, 1, 2, 3, 5. D flat, 1, 2, 3. G minor, flat 5. So 1, flat 3, 4, flat 3, flat 5. And C7, there's a flat 9 on that chord, right? So again, the rule here is on major chords 1, 2, 3, 5, and minor chords 1, flat 3, 4, 5. So how come it's different? Some people ask. I think the idea is these shapes come from the pentatonic scales, right? So this playing kind of opens the door to pentatonic playing. So I think that's the reason why. So let's play that. Now I'm gonna try to improvise using these shapes. I think that these shapes are easier to improvise with. So remember what we're practicing when we're just playing the chord tones. There is zero element of improvisation in that. We're just learning the tools or the structures that we need to improvise. It's like practicing grammar. When you're practicing grammar and learning a new language, you're not having a conversation. You're learning the structures, you're internalizing the structures of the language so that you need to be able to have a conversation. So there's this same thing here, right? Like we're just learning the building blocks. But having said all that, you can improvise using these shapes. And you want to separate those two things. So depending on where you are, right? Like that's why it's hard for me to, if you were my student and I could hear you play, I could tell you what I think you should be working on. But if you find this stuff pretty easy, the stuff I just did, then yeah, try to improvise. But at first you need to just play them. Consistently, and don't worry that you're not improvising. The improvisation can come later. But again, if you find this stuff easy, well, try to improvise. You could play the whole shape or just notes from the shape. And then go to the next key and the next key, go through all 12 keys. I mean, that's a great workout session. So again, I'm not gonna do that right now because it would take a really long time. But if you have the iReal Pro, you can find Comrade Conrad. I think it's in the regular playlist, or you might have to go to the forum and search for the tune. And then you just go down and set the repeat function to transposition. Moving on, are you still watching? Now we're gonna do the same thing, but when we play minor chords, we're gonna play 1, 2, 3, 5 for minor chords as well. So instead of, and we're gonna do descending. Because it sounds very nice. And for the next set of chords there, the melodic minor modes chords, we're gonna think of the melodic minor, the parent melodic minor scale of those chords. So the parent melodic minor scale for the G minor 7 flat 5 is B flat minor. And C7, C altered, right? It's D flat minor. So then you have to think a little bit extra there. So let's try that. B flat minor, D flat minor, which is C altered. A flat melodic minor, which is G altered. 3, 4. Next key. Imagine doing that through every key. That's gonna be a really good workout for your brain and ears. Let's add even more stuff. Let's add 2 more notes. So before the shape, I'm gonna add the 6th and the 7th. You have the option of playing the flat 9 or the regular 9. Let's try that. Could be. Or you have an option there. Three, 4. Let me start over from the 3, 4 I messed up there. this technique, you can, if you edit what you're playing, leave some notes out and stuff like that, you can make it sound pretty musical. You can hear some motifs. Okay, so that was an idea on how you can kind of add notes to these shapes to make them into, turn them into kind of musical motifs that you can play. So it sounds, you can hear the changes, right? There's a motif there that your listener can kind of hold on to. Now we're gonna make it even more modern sounding, I guess. In order to do that, we need to play 4-part chords. So I'm gonna play the 4-part chords as drop 2. Kind of with voice leading, but every now and then I'm gonna change it up and jump around so that I'm kind of covering the whole fretboard here. So just play the 4-part chords. As chords. Maybe go here. Okay, so now I'm gonna do the exact same thing, but I'm gonna drop the top note. So the soprano voice, we're just not gonna play it, so instead we end up with these shell voicings, right? Now, and I'm gonna play them as lines. I love that. Right? So sometimes I end up with triads, regular triads, or some what I call non-generic triads. So this is a generic triad, that's what I call it. It's a B flat minor. This is some E flat without a third. A flat triad, and then this, which is a great. So if I play like 2 octaves, I get these kind of unusual intervallic shapes, some of which are just regular. So a B flat minor over the B flat minors. That might seem like an obvious thing, but we jazz musicians, we tend to forget to play triads. That we kind of shy away from triads because we think we need to include a 7th. We don't. The triad sounds great. Ironically, it sounds more modern to play the triad than to play like a B flat minor 13 or what have you. And then you get that kind of unusual shape. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna play those as 2 octaves. I'm gonna try anyway, so. flat through every key, and there's no way that's not going to improve your playing. For sure, that's going to improve your playing. So sometimes you get the triad of the chord, like A flat over an A flat major 7, or sometimes you end up with an A flat major over the F minor. But listen to this, for example, going from A flat to this. Sounds kind of like Adam Rogers, right? I think. Again, all this stuff is on my Patreon page. As always, a huge thank you to my patrons, and to everybody who's watched. Thank you for your time and attention, and I shall see you next time.